Hey, I'm Alex,
And I'm Trey.
and welcome to the BlackSheep broadcast. Today we have Scot Violette. He is a Bigfoot tracker. He has spent his whole life tracking
Right.
Bigfoot. I think he is the head of, or a part of, the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Research Project.
Do you think he describes himself as a Bigfoot investigator, like Leon the
Right. So
werewolf?
we've
Or
had this discussion where there's the choice between werewolf hunter or werewolf investigator. I feel like he's not going to call himself a Bigfoot hunter because I have heard Scott talk before about Bigfoot, and he's very well like spoken on the issue. He's very scientific. His background is in like anthropology, so
right.
he is a Bigfoot. Uh, I I guess I would call him like a Bigfoot scientist, if that ever
Right.
existed, if there ever was one.
Yeah. I hope he says
So
investigator.
really, I hope he says hunter.
Yeah.
That's such a cool title. Well, so we were just having this debate before we started. Trey, do you finally admit that the Pacific Northwest, parts of it are technically a rainforest?
To me a rainforest means like a tropical climate.
Okay.
Because I know you said that Scott says it's a rainforest, right? And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason we don't find Bigfoot there is because the rainforest
Yeah.
evaporates. From
Well,
what you've
whoa, what? Well, it's because like in deserts, like you find
right.
dinosaur bones in deserts because it's so dry, but like
Right.
rainforests, the soil is much more acidic, so things like
Yeah.
bones and remains kind of get eaten away by the
Yeah. Like the stuff that he's talked about before that we've looked at.
yeah.
That's one of his arguments, is that that's one of the reasons we don't find Bigfoot.
And it's because technically it's part of a rainforest. I
But
think it's
but
just measured in rainfall. Let me look this up because we can just argue
Well,
about
it's I looked it up. It said typically in tropical climates, but it didn't say it had to be in a tropical climate. I don't know how you call something a rainforest if it's not like super hot.
Okay,
Like, isn't that part of the?
first hit on Google, the Pacific Northwest temperate rainforests, which range from Northern California to British Columbia, exist in what is the
There are
world's
rainforests in
largest.
Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know about that.
It's just based on quantity of rainfall. Like, did you know? Technically, I think it's Antarctica could be
It's a
considered.
desert.
Yeah, because there's
Yeah,
not a
that
lot of
makes sense.
rainfall.
That's fine.
Why does that make sense? But a rainy to you, but a Antarctica is a desert, but a rainy forest can't be a
Well,
rainforest.
because all a desert is a lack of moisture. It has
Okay.
nothing to do with temperature.
Okay. So
But
the
rainforest,
moon is a desert, right? Would you
sure,
consider the moon a desert? Okay.
sure.
I don't know why the hell we're talking about
I don't
this,
either. But I don't.
but
I to me it doesn't make sense that the Pacific Northwest is a rainforest.
that's fair. Well, does it make sense to you that a Bigfoot could be living in the Northwest?
I mean,
How do you
sure.
feel about the matter? I want to gauge your opinion before we talk with Scott.
Um, I mean, I've talked about Bigfoot a lot just to my friends,
Yeah.
just as a sort of, I'm saying this because it bugs people. I don't know if I actually believe Bigfoot exists. I wouldn't be surprised if one did,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I actually believe that it does exist.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I'm agnostic about it, I guess. Like
Agnostic, yeah,
I'm that way about a lot of cryptids.
yeah,
I never really feel deep down like, oh, the Loch Ness monster is out there. I just know it. He's just chilling in Lake Loch Ness, you know? Yeah, maybe something exists, maybe it doesn't. That's kind of how I felt about the werewolf episode. It's like
yeah,
I can accept everything he's saying. I don't necessarily believe werewolves exist, but and also just culturally, I think there's a foundation to a lot of like myths and things like that. I think maybe the thing behind werewolves is these people were being like psychotic and thinking that they were wolves and like murdering people. So I get how that
yeah.
myth arises. So
Well, I'm more ready to believe in like Bigfoot than I am in werewolves, just because there's the sort of history of werewolves is very much like you said. It's like people thought they were wolves, or people were wearing like fur coats. Um,
well, yeah, I think it's like some early cultures the people came into contact with would be wearing
yeah,
like
like fur
the
pelts.
furs, and they would be like,
Yeah,
oh, these are
wolf
yeah,
people.
yeah. Apparently, the linguistic origin of like berserker is basically bear man because people will be wearing these bear pelts.
Yeah,
So if like a myth arose of like a werebear from that kind of thing,
yeah,
I could understand that from like an anthropological
yeah. But that's why I'm
standpoint.
saying I'm more ready to believe in like Bigfoot being real, because it's, I guess, more. There's not really like a cultural reason that people would think that Bigfoot exists, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like there's not like
yeah,
I can't think of any way that someone would like think that there's a giant monkey man out there,
it's
or like any
possible.
cultural misunderstanding. So I guess we'll
Well,
find out.
I think, yeah, I think we're going to find out. Hey, Scott, can you hear us?
Yep, again.
Okay, awesome. Where are you at right now? It looks really remote. Or is it a secret?
No, actually, yeah, we're in the northern woods of Maine right now, near Mount Katahdin.
So I think we'll just start with you sort of introducing yourself and what got you interested in the topic of Bigfoot.
Okay, my name's Scot Violette, and I run Blue Mountain Bigfoot Research. And what got me into Bigfoot research was actually my background in anthropology. Um, I went to college and I'm an anthropologist. My expertise was in Native American culture. And I spent a lot of times with numerous tribes all over the United States. And every single one of them has a Bigfoot legend. So, every legend has a basis in fact, I feel. So that's what really got me into doing the research on Bigfoot.
Yeah, what did it look like for you to actually start like studying Bigfoot, or I'm not sure how you would put it.
Okay, or doing research, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what do you describe yourself as? Like,
cryptozoologist, I guess would be the term. Um, but what really got me into it was I was working with the Miwok Indian tribe in Central California. They're in the Yosemite Valley area. And I was working with the tribe. We were doing some background history of the tribe. And we were looking at petroglyphs and pictographs, and that's kind of my expertise. And that's I learned how to read those a long time ago, and I've been all around the United States looking at them and studying them and researching them, and talking to elders and finding out what they mean. And I came across this one pictograph, and it had this very large creature on it, and then it had the regular size, natives on horses and all the other pictures, but it had this large creature. And I asked the elder, what's this creature? And he goes, oh, it's Bigfoot, just kind of nonchalantly. It's Bigfoot, like, duh, so I went, really? So I kind of delved into their beliefs, talked to them about, what's the history of this, and go back in the tribe for a long time. So I thought, well, if this tribe has one, do others. So I started contacting other tribes, and to date, I've clocked 175 tribes with Bigfoot legends and different names for them. The oldest pictograph that we've found is almost 2,000 years old. So if I've got a 2,000-year-old photo, basically, that's what photos were 2,000 years ago in North America, was a pictograph or a petroglyph, and I've got one of those. I'm like, so how long have people been seeing these things? So that's what really prompted me to get into the research.
And where are these tribes centered? Is it like in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, or is it somewhere else?
There are all the tribes that are in like conifer type forests, basically. So any of the tribes in the north, like all through North America, through Canada and North America, from Maine to Washington State, and then there's also a lot of legends and backgrounds in the southern states, like where in Louisiana and Texas and Florida especially, and they all have different names for them. They have different backgrounds of what the tribe thinks of them and all that stuff, but basically anywhere there's a forest. In the desert areas, no, and Midwest, no, but mainly where there's just any type of cover and concealment, basically. About anywhere you can find a black bear, you can find a Bigfoot story.
right. And so from these, like, I guess, legends or mythology that you heard from these tribes, what do you consider Bigfoot to be? Or like, what do you consider Bigfoot to look like?
I think, for me, coming at it from a scientific point of view, and with my background in anthropology and studying humans, it's kind of a long explanation, but I don't think they are a primate ape like gorilla type creature. I think they're probably a lost hominid, one like us, a hominoid,
Interesting.
a type of human, just further back on the evolutionary stage, or further ahead. I don't know if we're all that evolved ourselves, but what I mean.
Yeah, I've seen in like biological anthropology the evolution model of the bush, where basically hominid species diverge not in a linear fashion, but the sort of branch out one after the other and from each other, and what that results in is multiple hominid species actually coexisting, or I should just say living at the same time together, not necessarily peacefully.
Yeah. Well, there were Homo sapiens and Neanderthals at the same time,
Yes,
and way back.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually, I look at it this way, and like you said, yeah, there is the bush thing. It's not like a linear tree. You know that picture you have of it's got the monkey and it turns into the person. Well, that's bunk. That's not. There's no missing link. That's not how it worked. You got to look at it more like the waterfall. And if you got up the top of the waterfall, there's uh, a starting point somewhere where the water comes over the edge. That's There's a base human somewhere up in the top of the waterfall, and as the water comes down, it hits rocks and it splits. And as we developed and grew and spread out across the world, um, we developed in different ways due to different climates, different diets, different, so the humans split off. Like this one needed certain things and this one needed certain things, but they grew together, they grew out, and then sometimes they came back together, like at the bottom of the waterfall, the water comes back together. Well, we know that um, doing dating, we know that Homo sapiens, us, Homo neanderthal from France, Homo nandali from Africa, Homo floresiensis, they're also in Africa, and Homo heidelbergensis is another European one. All those species live together at the same time.
Oh, geez. So yeah, we're talking like five different hominid species at one time, then, not just two necessarily.
Exactly, and we also know that Homo floresiensis developed after we did. They're actually a younger species in human than us, but they, went extinct. And we know that Homo neanderthal, the typical caveman, they're still alive. Here's a shocker for you: they are still alive, because if you have like a Central European ancestry, like France area, all those people are showing up with 3 to 4% Neanderthal DNA in their blood, so, or in their DNA, not blood, but in the DNA. So they're still alive basically. So that guy that looks like a caveman probably still is. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know that your hominid theory is not the only possible explanation for Bigfoot. Some people do believe that whatever Sasquatch is, it might be more of like a previously thought to be extinct animal. Like I think the Gigantopithecus is one of the most popular explanations for Bigfoot.
Um, Gigantopithecus was really more of a gorilla type animal, and but it was, I think it's earlier than what I'm considering what Bigfoot is now. I think it could have been an old ancestor, like we have Neanderthals. Well, they had Gigantopithecus in their chain somewhere, or they're split off from them. Um, the reason I'm thinking that Bigfoot is a hominid species, because we classify hominids as for two things. The difference between us and apes is we walk upright and we have small canine teeth. Gorillas and chimps have big canine teeth and they walk on all fours. So basically, that's the difference, if you want to tell, between primates, apes, and primates, hominids. Um, so Bigfoot, and from all the descriptions, all the reports I've got, photographs, Roger Patterson film, from all those, they walk upright, and from the look at their face, they have small canine teeth. So that would classify them technically as a hominid.
Right. So do you think that like the Yeti or like other sort of subspecies of Bigfoot or similarities to Bigfoot are the same thing, just in other places, or what?
Yeah, just to chime in for people that might not know, the description of Bigfoot as being this like bipedal hairy ape that lives in North America, that profile is not unique to North America, but there's multiple sort of versions of Bigfoot across the world. Like there's the Yowie in Australia, the Orang Pendek in South America. So they seem to be all over the place if they're real.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're okay. If you look at it like with humans, like the Orangutan in South America, and then you've got you said the Yowie, that's in Australia. And of course, you've got the abominable snowman, the Yeti in Nepal. But they're basically the same as Bigfoot if you look at them. So we've got different types of humans in different places. You've got Asians, you've got Native Americans. We look different, but we're still humans. So I'm thinking that's probably the same case. They had an origin somewhere, maybe Gigantopithecus was their origin, but as they went to different areas in different places, they developed differently to survive and where they're at. So they're probably just split off species of Bigfoot. I mean, they're all the same species of creature. They just live differently and develop differently.
Like for me personally, that kind of adds to the possibility of Bigfoot. The chance that he exists would be the fact that this creature seems to be being sighted across multiple continents, and if Bigfoot is entirely fiction, entirely imagined, why do so many different cultures seem to be inventing the exact same creature with the same habits, right?
I mean,
True.
like dragons are also a thing that's been talked about all over the world.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. I guess my only rebut to that would just be that different continents and different cultures do seem to represent dragons pretty differently. Like, in Europeans, you have like kind of like the Game of Thrones style dragon, and they represent different things. But in parts of Asia, they're more like serpentine, and they're associated with different like cultural symbols like wisdom and things like that. But yeah, I mean that is fair.
Yeah, I there may have been dragons. No, just kidding. I don't think there was dragons. But
I was about to say we're about to get on an interesting topic right
now. No, but it's just the way I look at it, and from an archaeological point of view, I think like in the 1100s and back in the beginning of human civilization, I think the dragon legend comes from people finding dinosaurs, bones on the ground and said, oh, and they didn't know this was, a million years old. They thought it was like last week. So, there's that. That's what I think that some of that may have been, I can't prove it, but that's what I think where dragons came from.
That's
but
fair.
the difference between dragons and what I think, and there's another one too. If you ever seen the skull of a woolly mammoth, it looks like a human cyclops. One big eye. It's got the same human. The skull, if you were to look at it, I think that's where cyclops legends came from. These giant people with one eye. Well, they were finding skulls of woolly mammoths and like, oh, that looks like a giant human with one eye.
That's fair.
So I think that's where some of that stuff came from. The difference, I believe, is we still see Bigfoot today. I mean, I still get reports almost weekly from people all over the United States. And so we're still seeing these. I mean, they're not like, okay, we figured out dragons were, probably misidentified dinosaurs. I mean, we still have reports. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it took me 25 years to actually see one. I saw Bigfoot 2 years ago. I got a photo of one, but it took me 25 years in the woods to see it. So people don't see dragons and report it every day today, but they do see Bigfoot and report it every day today.
So you said you've actually seen one of these things?
Yes.
I guess what led up to that moment where you actually saw a Bigfoot?
What led up to that was they're very elusive, and I think it's a matter of population. There's so small amount of them. Their population is so small that it's almost impossible to run across one. Where I was doing research at the time when I saw one was in the Blue Mountains of Eastern Oregon, and there's 27,000 square miles of forest where nobody lives. No towns. There's a couple highways go through it, but that's it. 27,000 square miles of forest. I had been doing research in that area for 5 years. I just got lucky where I had 5 different reports from 5 different people that didn't know each other tell me that they saw something, heard something, smelled something in this small area in the woods in that 27,000 square miles. 5 people in the same week told me a story. So I thought, boom, that's where they probably are. You know, lucky me. So I actually spent a week in the woods, and I got about a 3-second glance at one of them, and that was it. I do have a photo. It's on my website. It's your typical blurry Bigfoot photo. But then you had to blow up the picture to see the face. But I saw it with my own eyes a lot clearer than the camera picked it up. And it was sitting in the woods, bobbing its head like this, looking at me. It actually growled at me, and I growled back at it. So,
You growled back at it?
yes.
Why? Was that just out of instinct, or like?
Yeah, I was trying to provoke it so it would, stay there, basically.
I think one of the highest possible honors in the cryptozoology community would be to be the first man to ever get mauled and killed by Bigfoot. I would love that. I would take one for the team.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be proof. That'd be proof.
Yeah.
If you come back from the force with your arm ripped off, then I'd be like, sure, Bigfoot exists.
But I'd have a handful of hair in my other hand. So
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's awesome that you saw one better with your eyes than on camera, but it begs the question, why are all of these pictures of Bigfoot? All of them are really bad, to be honest. They're all blurry. The footage is mostly terrible. Spare the the Patterson-Gimlin footage. Are they just that elusive that the only pictures that we can even get of them are that bad, or?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, like in my case, I've got, it was 200 feet away, and its head was bobbing in this opening. My camera kept trying to focus on the trees in front of it. A lot of times you only get seconds of a glimpse, so they're very elusive, so they want to get away from you. And I think the fact that we even see them at all is just because they made a mistake, and we're in their forest, they're used to everything around them, and they probably got better smell than we do. So they know we're coming a long ways away, better hearing probably. But so you get a really fleeting glance. And if you don't have a camera ready, and I literally had my camera in my hand ready to go when I saw it, you just got seconds and then they're gone. So if you're pulling your camera up trying to click the picture while it's walking away, you get these blurry pictures. I guess the best case we have is the Roger Patterson film from 1967, and that was taken back before there was digital anything, so almost impossible to fake that.
Yeah, and I was looking at that footage recently, just on YouTube, and it is kind of crazy. Trey, have you seen the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film?
Is it the one where he like walks and he turns to look?
Yeah, it was basically shot in the woods of California, I think, by these a few people. And when you're looking at this thing walking across the screen, across this dried creek bed, I mean, it's almost like you can see like muscles shifting underneath the fur, and it's really... It is low quality, but it's also very real looking. I'm blanking on what year it was filmed. It was like the
1967 in October.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, like you said, it's prior to digital editing, but the costume technology that was available at the time was pretty bad, or at least not on par with what we're actually seeing in the film. I think the best ape-like costumes were for the Planet of the Apes movies back from the 60s. And if you look at those, it's just not convincing, not as convincing as what we're seeing.
Right. And if you look at it really closely, there's a guy, a friend of mine, he's Bigfoot research too. He's also an anthropologist. Actually, he has a doctorate in anthropology. And his expertise is in how we developed upright walking. He's looked at this film a long time ago, and there's something interesting about the way that thing walked across that stream bed is it doesn't walk like a human. It never locks its knees. It never bounces. It doesn't bounce. We bounce because we lock our knee and vault over our hip when we walk. This thing walks with a bent knee. Its foot bends in the middle. In the footprint cast that we have, there's no arch. If we didn't have an arch, our foot would bend in the middle like apes do. But since this doesn't have an arch, the foot bent in the middle, so the foot is actually directly straight up and down as soon as the toe leaves the ground. Humans' feet never reach past like 20 degrees because we walk like a pendulum. And this was walking with its foot like this and then down flat. So to replicate all that stuff, the muscle movement, you can actually see the muscles move under the skin while it's walking. And if you look closely, there was a rupture of one of the muscles on one of the legs that flexed every time it walked. You can even see that. The best book I've ever read about that film was done by a guy by the name of Bill Munns. He wrote a book, When Roger Met Patty, and he was a Hollywood special effects artist in the 1960s. And he took that film, the original film, and took a digital photo of every single frame of that film and put it together, and was able to really enhance it and digitally and look at it. And he said there's no possible way that's anybody in a suit, because there's some things humans can't change, like the distance between your kneecap and your hip. There's an average, right? Well, the average on this creature is not a human average. So if this was some guy in a suit, he had to have this weird surgery to make his kneecaps closer to his hips, and that was really convincing to me when I looked at that.
Right. So from your research, what I guess is the behavior of a Bigfoot? Are they solitary? Do they hunt people, or do they hunt things, animals? I don't.
Yes, they hunt animals. We get reports from that all the time. There's a couple videos now. In this day and age, videos and photographs, I myself even take with a grain of salt. If it's really convincing and Pixar didn't do it, I'm not sure, if I would accept it. Yeah, we find deer kills. The most convincing one that I have found was about 7 years ago. We found a lady said she found a deer in a tree. And so we went out and investigated this, and there was a deer laying on 2 tree limbs. So you've got 2 tree limbs sticking out the side of a tree. It wasn't hanging like a human would have hung a deer. It was laying across the tree limbs like this, 8 feet in the air. So you would have to have a ladder to hoist it, to get it up there and put it on this tree, unless you're 8 foot tall and you just set it up there. And then after examining the deer, there's no bullet holes, there's no cuts, nothing. It just had a broken neck. So if there's an 8 foot hominid out there who has like a 5 to 6 foot stride, can run down a deer and grab it by the neck and break it and stick it in a tree for later. So there's that. And then there are also another thing, if you look at the Patterson film and other photographs that people have got of Bigfoot, and you look at it, their body is a lot longer than a human's body, their torso. So they have a lot longer digestive system than we do, a digestive tract. So the food stays in the digestive tract longer, so they can eat rougher foods like tree lichen, stuff we can't get nutrients out of, they probably can. And so it's just like, apes re-eat their feces to redigest, gorillas especially.
Oh, Jesus.
To redigest it. So they may
Gross.
do the same thing. I know, they may do the same thing, but cats and dogs do too. So there you go.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, even if a Bigfoot could process nutrients like differently than us with things like lichen and things like that, it still sounds incredibly taxing on an ecosystem to have an 8 foot tall hominid, and especially one that we can't place. The thing that bugs me is is there no one out there who who questions, there seems to be some sort of predator who's devouring all of these deer and all of these plants, wouldn't that affect an ecosystem in a noticeable way?
Yeah, and I think that's people don't, that's one thing, really keep track of that. And there's a lot less of people in the forest than there used to be. Surprisingly, there's more humans on the planet, but there's less of them in the woods than there was like in the 1800s. You don't notice that there's huckleberry patches, and we don't eat tree lichen, so we're probably not looking for missing tree lichen on trees, and stuff like that. And the deer population is pretty huge. So 1 or 2 deer per Bigfoot isn't going to be noticed, probably that much. And in the areas they're in are places that, like I had to hike where these people were reporting this thing. It was like 7 or 8 miles off a trail. I mean, in the middle of nowhere, where people don't go. there's deer in those areas too, but people don't go there, so they don't notice the deer missing.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because on a previous episode, we talked with someone whose interest was in werewolves and dogmen. And regardless of what you think about that creature, there is an argument to be had that population visibility is not always reflective of population density. Like there can be a lot of animals occupying a certain area, and they can practically be invisible in a way, like deer or with like elephants in a jungle. They can be hidden despite, even though these seem like something that would stand out like a sore thumb.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One, if they're human intelligent, I mean, not tool making intelligent, but I think human like intelligence and like us, and they know us to be their only predator, basically, because they've been with us, since since the dawn of us, basically. So they probably know our habits pretty well and be able to avoid us. And another thing, what I did a few years ago was I contacted the Forest Service in the area in Oregon where I was, in the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest. I asked them how many animals are in the woods, and they told me there was 10,000 deer. So I see deer all the time. There was 8,000 elk. I see elk all the time when I'm in the woods, and I spend a stupid amount of time in the woods. I actually live full time in our RV, so we're always in the woods. So they said there's like almost 1,000 or 1,200 bear in the area that I was at. Now I see a bear about every other year, and they said there were 600 to 800 cougars. I have never seen a cougar in the woods. People hunt them, but they use dogs and baiting and stuff like that, But or they're better hunters than I, but I've never seen one in the woods. So if there's only like say 100 Bigfoot in that 27,000 square miles of forest, my chance of running across them, that's pretty much nil, basically. And
Right.
they're smart enough to avoid us.
Yeah, I am also curious. What do you think about the werewolf/dog man?
They're aliens, actually.
You know what? You're a Bigfoot expert if I've ever met one, and I would be sad if I got this far and didn't ask. Is there any possibility that Bigfoot is an exiled alien who is being kept on this planet as a prisoner for his crimes?
I don't, and I have a good reason not to. And I've heard all sorts of reports. I have a Bigfoot website that people can submit reports, and I get reports for everything, not just Bigfoot. And there's two things that I think really exist is Bigfoot and chupacabras. So that's my next one. But as far as the dogmen and the werewolves and shapeshifters and stuff like that, I think some of this are misidentified Bigfoot. Some of them quite possibly could be. There is the aliens drop them off kind of thing, and that could have been. It's possible, but here's why I don't think Bigfoot's one of those things. Is because in recent years they've been doing a DNA study on Bigfoot. They've had people send in what they think are Bigfoot hair, Bigfoot this, and the latest, greatest technology is environmental DNA. It's when being able to take, a vial of water out of a pond in the middle of the woods somewhere and then do a DNA run on it and see all the animals that's drank out of that in the last, 5 years. So in so doing that, there's 135 in that survey, ones that match each other but don't match anything else on the planet, all over the United States and China, actually worldwide. So worldwide, there's 135 samples right to date that match each other, don't match anything, and it's a primate. And it's within the realm of primate that's like the chimpanzee's different from us. So it's like 99% us.
Yeah, I feel like one of the big things about Bigfoot is that, he is so most people would say he's a primate or, this ape-like animal, but he's in North America. And if North America was a place that was brimming with, other ape species, maybe the idea wouldn't be as crazy. But the thing is that this primate or hominid or whatever seems to be, unique to North America, or, he's seen it in other places, but he is here while other apes and species like him are not out there in the wild.
Right, right. And yeah, and a lot of them are actually exclusive to here in Russia. There's no primates in Russia either. So there's those. But the thing is, there's such thing as Earth DNA. There is a strand of DNA in everything on this planet that comes from this planet. So it's like a little tag saying you're from Earth. So there's only one animal on this entire planet that does not have that Earth DNA, and that's an octopus.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you were mentioning that because, yeah, Trey and I were just talking about the octopus panspermia theory. It's totally random, but that's interesting. It's the idea that octopus eggs basically came from, they have an alien origin on, like on a frozen asteroid or something of the sort. But yeah, I guess maybe it's more likely that octopuses are from space and Bigfoot is actually from Earth.
That even goes back to the pictographs and stuff. I've got drawings that look like the modern day photographs of Bigfoot. Same brow ridge, almost identical to some of the photos we have today. In the Patterson film, when it turns and looks at the camera, I've got pictographs that look just like that, are 500 years old. It's got the same features, that's just putting it back in time, And some of the other legends, kind of interesting that a lot of the Native American tribes, I mean, some of them even say they've had treaties with Bigfoot, literally treaties. Like, you stay here, we stay here, quit eating our people. There's a lot, there's half the tribes in the nation say they're cannibals, and the other half said they're kind of benevolent creatures that live in the woods and leave us alone. So, so there's the gamut, So I imagine some of those stories come from, like, there's probably bad Bigfoot, cannibal.
Just like there's bad humans, I guess.
Just like there's bad humans, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is possible if Bigfoot has a hominid-like intelligence. Different tribes of hominids have had social structures and they had different ways of dealing with things, so it's possible that some of them would hurt humans and some would be peaceful, I guess.
Oh, I would think so. Most of the time in the at least the reports we get today, people never see them more than two or three, like a mother and a father and a child together. They might stay in small family groups. My theory is that they do stay in small family groups because that's most of the reports we get. At one point, there's always teenage boys, just like in other primates. The teenage boy has to go out and get his own family, basically. So you got these rogue hormonal teenage boys in the woods that are probably violent, because teenage boys, doing teenage boy stuff. So there is a series of books called Missing 411, and there's a guy David Pallades, who, by tracking missing people who go missing in forests, and there's a surprising amount of those, and so I imagine some of that could be rogue Bigfoot.
Sorry, I am also partially curious, I guess, about their social structure, because you say they are hominids and you believe they sort of live in a small family structure, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because that's sort of a defining characteristic of apes and hominids is how social they are and the fact that they live in social groups. Do you think they have any sort of language or way of communicating?
Yeah, there's been what's really interesting is in the 70s, there was some recordings of actual language. And to this date, they can't figure out what it is. They have sent the recordings to different universities with linguistic recordings, and they've found that there's actually kind of a syntax to the language. They don't know what they're saying, but there's one conversation, and I'm going to see if I can play this and see if you guys can hear it, where
That sound is terrifying. It sounds like gorillas fighting over a cabbage.
It's very scary.
It did. Yeah. But what's interesting is when they analyze this, they said there's two voices. They are arguing, basically, and there's kind of syntax to the voices. but they also, the interesting thing is they said that was the vocal range was further than a human's. There's stuff that we can't hear that's in that recording. After they broke it down, there is more voice to that than we can hear.
Oh, so it's sort of like a dog whistle, yeah?
Yeah, it's like lower, actually lower. It's what's the word? Not that. Anyway, it's below our hearing level, and it's in a subtonic area. So yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, I'll send you that. But what's interesting is this guy recorded this in the 70s, and I think it was gosh, when was it? 1972, I think is when or 71. I can't remember exactly, but early 70s is when they recorded that. In 2016, another guy got a recording of almost the exact same type of language. It wasn't the exact same, but it was, that language again. He recorded it, years later in Georgia. So this came from California, and that one came from Georgia years later, but they're almost identical as far as the language goes.
So you say that Bigfoot is a hominid that sort of developed alongside Homo sapiens. Why has Bigfoot survived when other hominids like the Neanderthals have basically died out or have been incorporated into Homo sapiens?
They avoided us. Yeah. And I say that kind of jokingly, but also it's kind of a fact. They learned to avoid us early. It's like if you look at, we talked about Gigantopithecus earlier. We're Gigantopithecus, where the teeth that's been found, of that creature, and the fossil record is in China. It's on the edge of the Bering Strait, and they're 10,000 years old. Well, where were we 10,000 years ago in North America? We were in China on the edge of the Bering Strait, and then the Ice Age happens. The land bridge opened up called Beringia, and we walked across it into North America. And that's how Native Americans developed over here. They came from China. That creature was found in the same place, same time we were on the edge of the Bering Strait. So did it follow us across here? I'm saying yes, it did. So back then we were more Chinese, or the Native Americans were more Chinese than they are now. But if you look at the DNA record in North American Native Americans, they have a Chinese origin. So because that's where they migrated from 10,000 years ago. So if this creature migrated 10,000 years ago over here and developed with us, in the first 500 years of our existence in North America, we wiped out 4 species of animals. The mini horses, woolly mammoth, saber-toothed cats, they saw us doing that in the first 500 years we were over here with us. They're like, okay, that's what we need to avoid. So since then, in the last 10,000 years of their education, they said human bad, stay in the woods.
So you're saying that they were kind of concurrent with Homo sapiens like Neanderthals were, but they evolutionarily developed the, I guess, mindset of we need to stay in the woods and away from these people.
Yes.
Because the ones that didn't were killed by humans.
Right.
And the ones that did are the ones that survived.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, maybe that's smart. Maybe the Bigfoots saw us hunting those animals thousands of years ago, and the have been watching us recently building our nuclear reactors, and they're still thinking, the move is to not mess around with humans.
Exactly. I bet they're trained as an infant to avoid humans at all costs. I'm pretty sure, because I think to them we're probably their only predator.
One thing that I'm curious about is most of your arguments about Bigfoot behavior and avoiding humans, most of it relies on a presumption of behavioral normalcy. The thing is that animals don't always act with static behavior. Some animals, contract illnesses or diseases that can alter their behavior. It can alter their sense of boundaries, like animals with rabies or with mange. Why don't we ever see rogue Bigfoots that have this problem in society?
I kind of think we do at times. Um, on average in the United States, there's about 2,500 reports a year. Um, Probably there's a percentage of those that are just misidentified bears or too much alcohol that night, stuff like that. But I bet you there's a good percentage of, and I'm guessing about 60 of it is probably pretty credible. So I think people do see them. I think they do mess up, or there are times that we just collide with them. But the thing is, nobody believes people when they say they saw one. So, right now, uh, my wife and I's goal is to collect those stories, and that's what we're trying to do right now. That's why last year we sold our house, we bought an RV, and we are traveling the United States right now. That's our intent.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I guess in defense of Bigfoot, not all animals when they're sick act out like that. Like when cats get sick, for example, they'll go off into solitude and like die or figure it out there. So
Right.
it's not like, I guess the behavior you're describing isn't unheard of.
Yeah, and another thing I think of, like I said, I don't think they're tool making intelligent, because we don't find Bigfoot tools. But I think they're tool using intelligent, because we get a lot of, and in fact, I've had it happen to me, reports of rocks being thrown at people. Like, you get too close, this rock flings out of the forest right at you. I've heard a lot of people getting rocks thrown at them but not hit, which either Bigfoot's a really bad aim, or they're just warning shots, across the bow. Get out of my territory.
Yeah.
So no one's been speared yet, in other words.
No, it's been speared. So yeah, because I don't think they know how to make spears, but I think they can use rocks to kill things. I think they can use sticks, and I do think that they're probably well versed in like medicinal plants. If they're sick, they know what to eat. Cats do, dogs do.
Yeah.
Cats eat grass when they're sick or whatever. So if they live in family units too, I think they might also probably, I don't know if they bury their dead or they carry them somewhere where humans aren't going to find them. That's why we've never found bodies. Or another reason is they're probably, where they live are always in these forests where there's like, an inch and a half of forest loam every year. It's moist, it's wet, it's snowy, it's rainy, and fossils don't survive that type of acidic layers of, forest. I mean, we find fossils in deserts because it's dry. We don't find them in forests because they're gone. They dissolve. So I think that's another reason why if they probably bury their dead, if not, it's just the fact of where they live, because we don't find dead bears in the woods. I don't know if you knew this, but there was an anthropologist years ago put up $25,000 to anybody who could bring him a bear carcass out of the woods, not shot by a human, died on its own. He never had to pay. Nobody could do it.
I will also say, with the having heard stories of people getting stuff thrown at them, that also does imply a hominid rather than an ape, because that's one of the main differences between like humans and apes is our shoulder ability to throw things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you've ever seen an ape try and throw something, it can't. Like, it just doesn't throw it very far at all.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm curious if you've seen that picture of the orangutan using a stick to fish.
Yes.
No?
It's kind of creepy because I think the orangutan learned it from watching like native fishermen spear fish.
Yeah, it's very Planet of the Apes. Yeah. So, no, and there's chimpanzees use sticks and rocks. They use rocks to break shells open. They use little sticks to get termites out of termite mounds and stuff like that. So, they use tools.
Now, one question I have is, where do the bones go? I have a roommate who's seriously into hunting, and I talked with him briefly about the idea of Bigfoot, and essentially he said that scavengers have like really big molars that allow them to crunch bones. But I mean, does that happen with Bigfoot as well?
Well, we know that canines and bears, they crack bones for bone marrow, why they have those back teeth. And why dogs chew on bones is to get the bone marrow out. But a lot of people don't know that porcupines, one of their primary diets is bones. And they need all that calcium for those spines. So that's one thing. But like I mentioned before, we have very acidic soil. There was a test done a few years ago by Bigfooters, and what they did is they took a deer carcass, a deer that had been hit on the road, and they took it out to the forest. They actually staked it down to the ground and put a time-lapse camera on it. In 7 days, you didn't know it was there. In 7 days, gone, out in the middle of the forest. Bones, everything was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. But so we still find footprint casts today, and we still find nests, and we find, DNA. So there is evidence that has not stopped, like at dragons. We don't see dragons, flying in the sky today, or there's no reports of them.
It might just be that nobody actually survives a dragon sighting. They're just incinerated on contact.
Yeah, it could be too. Nobody survives seeing a dragon. Yeah, we've even found footprints this year, but so this here is a footprint cast taken out of the Blue Mountains. It's 15 inches long. The toes here, right? But in that little toe, if I get it close enough, I don't know if you can see, there's dermal ridges, but there's dermal ridges in this small toe. So fingerprints. Well, these fingerprints have been studied by fingerprint experts for like the police force, and they found out that these don't match humans. I mean, they're not a human pattern. And they also fingerprinted chimpanzees and gorillas from zoos, and they don't match those either. So there's stuff like this that can't be faked, to me anyway. You can't fake a fingerprint. These two here, this is the same creature. We got a left and right foot, but this one here is kind of deformed, right? If you're to draw the bone structure out in this, and this was done, they drew the bone structure out and show it to a podiatrist and say, what's wrong with this guy's foot? Because it's kind of deformed and stuff. The podiatrist actually said it's something called clubfoot. It's a natural thing that humans have, and it's a spinal cord cyst at birth, that causes it. And they said, if you want to diagnose it without taking an x-ray, they'll have 2 nodules on the outside of the foot. Well, this has 2 nodules on the outside of the foot right here. So this is an actual diagnosable ailment.
Yeah, first I'll say that, Scott is showing us these footprints, but you can go to our Instagram that we plug later if you want to see them. And how many of these footprints were there exactly?
1,089 of these. So there's stuff like this. I'm saying, I think this legend has a little basis in fact, because there is actual modern evidence to this. And I don't see much modern evidence to Cyclops or dragons.
Right.
Okay, well, Scott, thank you for being on with us today. Do you have any specific plugs you have, or places where people can go to learn more about the Blue Mountain Bigfoot Research Project?
Yeah, you can go to our website. It's squatchoregon.com. And also I have a YouTube channel called Blue Mountain Bigfoot Research. And if you got questions or stuff, we go live every Sunday night. If anybody wants to join us there, and ask questions and talk about Bigfoot. So.
Okay, Scott, we need you to help settle a debate we've been having since the beginning of the podcast. Is the Pacific Northwest technically a rainforest?
Yes.
But isn't it? I feel like tropical has to be rainforest has to be tropical, though.
No, it does not have to be. Okay, in the Olympic National Forest in Washington State,
Right.
it rains 300 days a year.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it is gorgeous. There's moss over everything. It's gorgeous. Yeah. But yeah, it is a rainforest.
You can follow the Black Sheep Broadcast at Black Sheep Broadcast on Instagram, Black Sheep Broadcast page on Facebook, and at Broadcast Sheep on Twitter.
And if you have any paranormal, strange, or out there stories, experiences, hobbies, or occupations that you want to share with the podcast, just shoot us an email at blacksheepbroadcast@gmail.com.